Hi Sugar Snaps, welcome to another episode of the Tapestry Weaving series. If you're new to my channel, my name is Brittany, welcome in. Right now I'm doing a series on tapestry weaving using PVC pipe looms. Check the description below for links to the other videos in this series and the resource page for all the materials and tools you'll need to make your own tapestry loom and for the supplies for tapestry weaving. You can find it in the pinned comment as well. Today I want to go over how to create a design or a cartoon for a tapestry. This is going to be a pretty basic overview of how to do this. So if you want more in-depth information, check the resource page for books and other resources on how to design more complex tapestries. I have a basic tapestry design that goes over a lot of tapestry weaving techniques. I have this on my website, textileindy.com. If you want to download this PDF, it's free, and you can use this as your cartoon for tapestry weaving. Before we go any further though, let's kind of define the difference between design and what a cartoon is. A design is where you're designing or conceptualizing a tapestry overall, like what your image is going to end up. And design can be an idea or a feeling, or it can be a image, trying to take something from real life and putting it into woven fabric. But that design, that developed idea, then needs to be turned into a cartoon, which is a basic outline or design that has been sketched out on paper so that you can follow along as you're tapestry weaving. Now you can freeform tapestry weave for sure, and that just means that you're weaving and creating the design as you go without strict guidelines. The reason I laid this design out the way I did is it's somewhat depicts a landscape conceptually, and it also has a lot of the beginner tapestry weaving techniques that you'll want to learn to have a foundation in tapestry weaving. So you'll be covering stripes, how to weave angles, how to incorporate different striping to add in shading, or if you wanted to have a mix of colors, if you're playing with color gradation, so how to do shorter stripes or layers of color, and then how to weave curved layers, multiple layers, and how to build multiple pieces that somewhat seem to all happen at the same time or in the same plane, and then how to create angles that connect where the yarns connect so there aren't spaces in between your rows. Again, a few more stripes, and then how to create shape, in this case a circle. You could also do the same concept with a square that's a little more straightforward than the circle. So this design is great if you've never done tapestry weaving before and you can play with lots of colors. I chose 3 different colors, white, black, and red, because they were basic to work with. I was able to consistently create a design in my tapestry, and it just helped me flow through the design more easily. If you want to do every single different section a different color and make it as colorful as possible, please feel free to do that, and you can end up with a tapestry that is unique to you even with this basic design. Now, if you want to design something of your own and you're using a PVC pipe loom, as I've shown you how to make in this video up here, then you're going to need to set up your warp in the width that you're going to be designing your cartoon. And sometimes the width of your warp determines the width of your cartoon, and sometimes the cartoon determines the width of your warp. Because we're working with a specific size of PVC pipe tapestry loom, the width that you have to work with is determined by how long this pipe here is. So I have about 12 inches here to work with. Now, the wider your tapestry is, the more complex it is to weave across, and you'll have to weave a bit, pull your thread through, weave a bit, pull your thread through, weave a bit, pull your thread through to get all the way across the fabric, because your hand can only fit through some of the width. And you use your hand to pick up the layers of the threads to weave across, like so. Okay, so your design for now is determined by the width of your tapestry. But 12 inches is quite a distance to design within, so there is a lot to work with. Now, because we use bead chain on this loom, that's something else that will affect your tapestry design. So the spacing between your warp threads is called ins per inch. So however many warp threads you have in an inch spacing. And the more warp threads you have, the closer together they are, and the more detail you can get in your weaving. But you'll need a very fine weft thread, the threads we weave in the opposite direction or that we build the fabric with, to be able to get between your warp threads. For the tapestry that we're working on in this project, we're using 20/6 warp threads, and I'm doing about 8 ins per inch. Again, which means that there are 8 warp threads in 1 inch. This will affect my design because it determines how much detail I can put into my design. If you're following along with this design here, then you have plenty of space to create these designs because it's pretty bold. Their shapes are larger, and so you don't need as many threads to get the concept across. If you're doing something with finer lines or finer details, it would be harder to get those details across. Now, I wanted to show you on a white piece of paper. The way I created this design was determining how wide I wanted the tapestry to be. And I drew that out by creating my rectangle on a piece of paper like so. And I am not a sketch artist, so I do my best. And that should be encouraging also if you are not a sketch artist, because you can do this even if you are not a super skilled 2D art person. So I am going to say my warp is about this far apart, or this wide, so I'm about 5 inches across. And the height of your tapestry, if I set this on here, is determined by the space you have between, or in the tall direction on your warp. And you'll need about 3 inches from the top in order to continue weaving, but also to have some excess to be able to tie off the top of your warp. And then we start here at the bottom up a ways, so we'll have about an inch or 2 up from the bottom to start the weaving. So calculate that out as you're creating your design as well. I like to stick within about 12 inches in height because that's something that's achievable in a shorter amount of time, and it also fits on the tapestry loom really well. So once you have your rectangle in place, the tapestry shape, then you now have a canvas to work within. And for this design here, I just went in and started creating the shapes that I wanted to work in and that I was teaching to build up the skills. So I started at very basic stripes, and then angles, and then curves, and then angles that are connected, and then shapes or circles here. So go ahead and create your design. Make it pretty geometric if you're first starting out, if you want to dive into designing or creating a cartoon for your own tapestry. A project that I'm going to attempt is taking a photo, this photo here of a canoe with me in the canoe and the sunset behind me. Now I'm going to take the concept of this image rather than the image itself, because the photograph depicts this design the most clearly. In the yarn, I'm going to have to work with color and gradation and mixing colors in order to get some of the depth of this photo. But tapestry really is a 2D art form, so it's going to take color and weaving manipulation to get the depth of this color. So this is probably going to be a very long project for me to attempt to get the depth that I want in this tapestry project. But the process I went through to be able to take this image and create a cartoon for my tapestry was I printed off the photograph that I wanted to do, and then I had that as my reference photo, and I took a black and white printout. It's very black, there's a lot of shadow in this image, and so in the printout you end up really focusing in on the light spots of this photo, where the sun peeks out here and the light hits the water. So then I went in and I traced that all out with a graphite pencil, just to kind of get an idea for where the broadest lines or biggest part of the design would end up. And then I took this image, and using this chalk paper, which is a type of transfer paper used in sewing, I laid this on my piece of paper, put this design on top, and then traced along those graphite pencil lines again, and that transferred blue lines onto this paper. And then I went over that with a ballpoint pen to come in and solidify those design lines. Now I have this image, my original photograph, in a basic design line form, and this is what I'm going to attempt to weave. Now this image is very small, and I'm working with 8 ends per inch, which means that I only have 8 warp threads per inch to work over. And this design, because it's so small, is going to make that really challenging. So I decided to expand this design out and make it wider. So I took that, blew it up, expanded it a bit, narrowed down the image view, and came in with markers to color in the different segments. And now this is more of a design. This is the concept behind what I'm working towards. And I could use this as a cartoon because it's fairly outlined. There's some distinct lines to follow, but I wanted to kind of play around with where I would put different colors. Now, I was limited by the color of markers that I had, so these colors are probably not the exact colors that I'm going to use in my tapestry, but this shows me kind of the differentiation, or where I want to use different colors. So laying it out like this and going through the process of your initial image down and breaking it down into basic lines and shapes, and then incorporating your colors and trying to figure out what your different colors would be, is helpful in taking a photograph or an image and breaking it down into a tapestry design. Now this is still going to be a challenge to weave over my tapestry warp because it's fairly detailed. So I would not suggest something this detailed as your first tapestry project, because there are just a lot of different layers and choices to make throughout the weaving process. And starting with a complicated design is going to set you back and cause a lot of frustration. Now, if you want to dive in and do something complex and just go for it, I am all for that. I am very encouraging of someone that just wants to go in full bore 100% and try their hand. There's no problem with failing. This is tapestry weaving, not rocket science. Nobody's gonna get hurt in the process, most likely. And why not try? So go ahead and decide what kind of image you want to create. Create your design, whether that's from a reference photo or something more conceptual like this design here. And in future videos, I'm going to kind of break down different structures. We'll be weaving through this design so I can show you angles, stripes, curves, and joint angles, and then circles, that kind of thing, because this structure will give you the basic tapestry skills. Once you have that down, then you can start to play around and see how to create this kind of thing in a design that's more complex. I decided to put together this video before doing the warping video because if you want something that's a little bit wider or narrower, then you're going to need to know that when you do your warping. So if you want to wait until the warping video, warp your loom, figure out that process, then do your design and create your cartoon, you can do it that way. If you want to create your design first, knowing that this is the size of loom you're working on, then you can create your design and then warp your loom, having the width of your design or your cartoon dictate how much or how wide your warp ends up being. You can do it both ways depending on how serious you are about getting a specific design. Well, that was a high-level view of cartoons and tapestry designs. It's very conceptual, so it's very open to interpretation. There are a lot of books and classes and courses with more detail on how to create a design and a cartoon. So if you're looking for something more in depth, check out the resource page in the description below. I have more resources for you if you want to dive in more deeply. Thanks for joining me in this tapestry weaving series. I have several videos coming out in the series, so be sure to check back every week on Saturdays to see what the next step is and to start weaving along with this tapestry or using the concepts from this tapestry to create your own design. Again, the tools and materials are in the resource page, so check that out. And until next week, happy making. Get your loom and your cartoon set up, and I'll see you for warping the loom next week.